Hey everyone, welcome back. Sorry if you can't hear me. I'll try to speak up as loud as I can, but I'm sick this week, so it's kind of hard to talk. This week I read the book A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline Wrinkle, and the illustrations on the front cover are done by Leo and Diane Dillon. Right there, Leo and Diane Dillon. This book is really good, really interesting book. It's about Meg and Charles Wallace and Calvin. Meg and Charles Wallace are brothers, brother and sister, and their father's gone missing. And Calvin is a friend who they meet early in the book, and he goes with them to try to find their father. And they have three women who live close to them, Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Which, and they help them tesser, which is a new form of travel. It's a fifth dimension. Help them tesser to a different galaxy where their father is fighting evil. What they see is a big dark blob or big dark shadow, and what we learn when they get to the different planet is actually a big brain that's called it. This book is riddled with symbolism and with metaphors and with all sorts of really wonderful, interesting literary merit. Definitely deserved to win the award, and I can understand why people are still talking about it. If I had a child who wanted to read it in the classroom, I would absolutely encourage them to read it. As a teacher in a public school, I would never suggest reading this book as a class because it does have a lot of really heavy religious undertones. And I think that is probably going to step into some problems. But this book is an amazing book. I think some of the things that it teaches kids is self-sufficiency. These kids, they don't have iPads, they don't have televisions, they don't have, they have themselves and their wits, and that's all they can depend on when they're down there. And we kind of belittle our kids sometimes by making them so dependent on teachers and on technology and on things that aren't just them. And so these heroes and heroines are that just because they are self-sufficient. The other thing about these characters that are so great is that all these characters are misfits. And so it's really easy for students to see something in themselves that fits with one of these characters because none of these characters are perfect. They are all very flawed in one way or another. This book uses some really interesting, really simple illustrations to kind of try to explain some really hard concepts in the book. This book, sorry, this book talks about using the fifth dimension to travel. So the first dimension is a line, and then the second dimension would be like a square. The third dimension is a cube. The fourth dimension is Einstein and theory of relativity and time. And then the fifth dimension is how you tesser. And so the book uses some very simplistic, very easy illustrations to help those ideas come across to students, and not just to students, I think to everyone, because I don't really understand Einstein's theory of relativity. So it was a really interesting book. The assignment that I put with it was to do the graph like we used to do with these, where you have like the, see if you can see it here, the exposition and the rising action and the climax and the falling action and the resolution, and to make a graph like that and to label the parts and then put in examples from the book of, what an example of the resolution, an example of the climax, an example of the falling action, an example of the rising action. So that was my assignment for the week. Guys, thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you have a fabulous week.